quickly thank the patience of the guests who've been sitting with us live. General Hasnain is with us, General Govardhan Singh Jamwal, whom Colonel Thakur, whose book he made reference to, is with us, and General KJ Singh is with us as well. General Hasnain, I'm just going to put some details on our screens, because let's go into the detail of what happened in Baramulla, Uri, around that sector between 22nd and the 25th of October. After the 26th, of course, was when the first planes, the Dakota, started landing in Srinagar, and Srinagar was saved. Those 2 days, we're putting out the map on our screen, sir. Can you just describe what was happening at that point of time?
Thank you, Rishabh. Thank you for having me on this show. It's an honor, absolutely, to be speaking on a national hero such as Brigadier Rajinder Singh Mahavir Chakra. I cannot see your map, but this area is absolutely etched in my mind since I have been the brigade commander at Uri and the GOC at Baramulla. Let me recount from the 22nd of October what really happened at this time. In fact, a little beyond that. When Brigadier Rajinder was given this order by Maharaja Hari Singh to go ahead and defend Srinagar at all costs, last man, last round, he went ahead. He could have, well, under normal circumstances, he could have made a small headquarter for himself at Baramulla and sent his troops ahead. But no, he went with the troops, and very correctly stated by his grandson, Colonel Divya Thakur, that it's a rarity to see a brigadier, a one-star general at that time, actually involved in proper combat with his troops. There were not more than 150 men under his command. They went up to Gadi, they fell back from there, came to Uri. At Uri, he gave battle again at a place called the Hyderabad Nala. I'm not sure whether it is.
Yeah, we're showing it on the map. We're showing it on the map.
Yeah. This was the place where he gave battle, Hyderabad Nala. The pillage of Uri took place around this time. There was such great frustration among the tribals that they pillaged the entire town of Uri. Thereafter, he was forced to fall back, and he destroyed the bridge on the Hyderabad Nala. Today, that bridge is called the Narsingh Bridge, which is named on a JCO who was a Victoria Cross from 1st Sikh. As you're aware, 1st Sikh came into the battle at a later stage on the 27th of October.
Yes.
From there, Brigadier Rajinder decided to fall back to Mohra. And that's where his position was established. By that time, very, very few men were really left. It is around this area of the power station at Mohra. I'm not sure if it is marked there, the power station of the Mohra, a little town. This is the place where he put up his deployment and decided to give battle. Now, what must be remembered in the course of this battle, what he was doing was he was preventing this road from getting opened. You see, otherwise the tribals had gone past from the other bank of the Jhelum, from around him. Lots of tribals had already advanced beyond and already reached Baramulla. The important thing was to hold the vehicles there. Because without the vehicles, without the logistics, they wouldn't have been able to go beyond. So he gave battle to those who were trying to open the road at Mohra. And it is in the course of this last battle, major battle, which happened on the 26th, that he was martyred, very, very unfortunately. Literally a last man, last round kind of an action.
Let me just delve into that, sir, if I can. General KJ Singh, the one-line order, Brigadier Rajinder Singh is commanded to hold the enemy at all cost and to the last man. Now, for people watching this broadcast, majority will be civilians. To receive an order which is basically telling you and conveying it to a very limited force of 100, 150 people that, boys, this is it, and you just leave. They left at 6 p.m., they reached at about 2 a.m. To the areas that General Hasnain was describing. It's obviously a difficult emotional moment under duress when you're being ordered to your death.
And see, you have to see it in the context that he was not an ordinary commander. He was the chief of J&K state forces. And you've heard Karan Singh, Maharaja Karan Singh, Excellency, that there was not even a discussion, there was not even a question that he was asking. Here is a man who knows that his force is down to this level. People, because of religious inclination, are revolting, or at Muzaffarabad there had been a kind of a mutiny, and he says he is going to go. Otherwise, like what General Hassan was saying, he could have set up a headquarters and controlled from there, but he went right ahead. He was leading from the front, and in our narrative that we have had to prosecute later because of Pakistan's these actions, what better proof than this, that the chief of J&K state forces went there and fought for us and sacrificed his life. So where is the doubt that what is the people of
Okay,
Jammu?
this was an important moment, General KJ Singh, because, we all know and we've discussed, the accession document to death, okay? This was the time when Maharaja Hari Singh, Karan Singh's father, the late Maharaja of Kashmir, had not yet signed the accession document. This was the time when Menon and was flying into Srinagar. These were the crucial days, because it's only 3 or 4 days later now that the accession document is in VP Menon's hand. It's got the signature of the Maharaja of Kashmir, and he flies it back to Delhi. Mountbatten was, of course, the other one to sign it in Delhi. So these 3 or 4 days literally were crucial to the history of the subcontinent. And what he did in holding the enemy was crucial, because on 26th, the Dakotas landed in Srinagar airport.
And see, his legacy, I have had the privilege of looking after Jammu, Katwa, Samba, when Pakistan was trying to spread the terrorism over there and take this proxy war down. I have been to various villages, his village Baguna, other villages in the neighborhood. Today, people over there still revere him like a god. They respect him hugely. In Jammu also, universities got the hall named after him, Chowk is named after him, Badami Bagh. So his legacy carries on. And one thing more I would like to correct through you, he was the second Mahavir Chakra winner.
Right.
First was Nayak Raju. And that all happened because, see, there was no Western Command. I commanded Western Command. There was some ad hoc setup called as Delhi and East Punjab Command.
Yeah.
It was created to look after partition and its after effects.
No, we are talking about, the Auchinleck is still commander of the Indian Army. We're talking about a complicated time in the Indian Army, including its ammunition reserves, its hardware is still in the process of bifurcation. This is a very convoluted time. But you mentioned incidentally Muzaffarabad. Let me get Major General Govardhan Singh into this. General Singh, Govardhan Singh ji, let's talk about where it began. When these guys, there was a unit of the state forces in Muzaffarabad which suffered a mutiny, and the commanding officer, if I remember my history correctly, was shot. He was a colonel level commanding officer there. Can you just educate us what happened in the run-up to these few days, 22nd October onwards, when the invasion begins, the next 2-3 days before the battle at Uri, sir? General Jamwal, if you can hear me, sir, please go ahead. Okay, let's get the audio check with him done and sorted out. We should have done this a few minutes before. General Hassan, let me take up that thought with you, because we've gotten independence on the 15th of August. There's no clarity. I'm just trying to put us back into historical context. Okay, you have Patel, you have Menon who's running around. There are 520 princely states. Okay. There is confusion in Hyderabad because the Razakars are raising a force to hold out. There is confusion in Goa. There is confusion in Pondicherry. There is still confusion in Junagadh. There was confusion at that point of time, which we don't talk about, in Balochistan, where the Balochis didn't want to join Pakistan. And there's confusion in Kashmir because the Maharaja simply is not making up his mind. He has some illusions of negotiating some sort of an autonomous setup at that point of time. Then the invasion begins. And the invasion was brutal. For people who want to read the history, read what happened in Mirpur, what happened in Baramulla, where everyone was massacred. There are a lot of Sikh families over there. The women were taken off into Rawalpindi and literally sold like slaves. There were busloads of people who were butchered and parked at the entrance of the towns as a warning to all these things. It's all recorded facts. Just reminder, General Hasnain, the few days leading up to this, once the invasion begins.
Recall here is that after partition, while all these states you just mentioned were dithering as to their decision, Jammu and Kashmir was one state which had actually called for a standstill agreement with Pakistan. Particularly with Pakistan, India was willing to give him time, but Pakistan, he had called for a standstill agreement, which Pakistan was also dithering all about. Of course, a lot of preparation had gone into this. There is a misapprehension among people that this invasion happened overnight. No. Right from the month of June, if you read Akbar Khan's book, that really brings it out very clearly. Akbar Khan is the man who actually led this whole invasion.
Yes.
And he is the man who writes that this preparation for this had begun from June, because they were expecting that there would be some kind of a problem as far as Jammu and Kashmir is concerned. They wanted to make sure that the contiguity of states as far as Pakistan was concerned would be maintained. So they were particularly interested in Jammu and Kashmir, the linkages to the north with China, with Central Asia, etc. So it's because of that, with this kind of agreement, with this kind of preparation that they had done, that they created these Lashkars. And even as the assets between India and Pakistan, the two armies, were being exchanged, there were squadrons, General Kamaljeet will remember, squadrons of the Armored Corps, which were moving from here to the Pakistan army.
Yes, and General Hasnain, there was British complicity. Auchinleck knew what was going on. He didn't brief the Indian command. He didn't brief Karyappa, who was then Lieutenant General. It was Major Brown who gave Gilgit-Baltistan to the Pakistanis, basically handed them over after killing.
Complicity was very, very intense in this entire.
Yeah, so there was complicity. So basically, from June onwards, with British complicity, they are planning this. This invasion is planned. They've sent their officers on leave to lead it.
Absolutely.
They put them in mufti to do all of this. Yeah, finish your thoughts, sir. Yes.
Is that Muzaffarabad, Gomel, Muzaffarabad, that the spark went off. That's where they instigated the revolt among the Muslim troops of the 4th Jammu and Kashmir Rifles, state forces, which later on became 4th Yakalai. But it's from there that this whole thing started. Their intention was very clear. I mean, there would be Lashkars who would be going in different directions,
yes,
to Naushera, to Poonch, northwards going up to Gilgit-Baltistan. But the one which was to come from Muzaffarabad along the Uri road, coming to Baramulla and Srinagar, was the most important one.
Okay, so let's put the puzzle pieces together. General KJ Singh, by this time, Muzaffarabad, Mirpur, the massacres, Baramulla, these are already taking place. They're all in the process of taking place. A massacre is happening there. There is nothing to stop these forces because most of the state forces have mutinied and rebelled. As I mentioned in Muzaffarabad, there was a mutiny. The appointee officer there of the state forces was killed. Now, at this point of time, Brigadier Rajinder Singh buys us the 2 days. The second heroic operation, of course, happens with the Dakotas that flew in. And, for people watching this broadcast, Biju Patnaik, the current Naveen Patnaik, Odisha Chief Minister's father, was one of the first to fly one of the Dakotas into Srinagar, which was another historic, amazing airlift operation immediately after the Second World War. So in these 3 or 4 days, between Uri and Srinagar, to the time that General Karyappa turns all of this around, these are iconic battles, and potentially, had a political decision not been taken, we could have reoccupied all of the state.
Rishabh, see, there is some amount of this thing. Some people say he bought us 2 days, but actually he bought us 4 days. If you logically analyze, he bought us 4 days. And this narrative of what we talk about defense of Jammu and Kashmir before we close, just going little off the subject, 1 year down the line, less than 1 year down the line, 9 months later, Brigadier Mohammad Usman gets up, stands up, and saves Naushera. So here is a very great story which emerged from this fight back which India put up, and this narrative that Pakistan has tried to build is so foolish because here Brigadier Rajinder went to rally his forces, and see, Brigadier Usman stood up. So these are the tigers Indian Army has built their legacy on.
Yeah, I've done a separate telecast of Brigadier Usman a few months ago, incidentally. I'm going to try to get in General Jambal. Can you hear me, sir? If you can hear me, just describe to us, General.
Yes, I can.
Yeah, just describe to us, sir, the few days leading up to the battle in Uri, sir, from Muzaffarabad when the mutiny took place to Uri, as you mentioned in your book. Just describe them to us, please.
Well, you want me to describe the Battle of Muzaffarabad, which Brigadier was not there, or from the time the first contact took place?
From that point onwards.
Briefly, actually, it is important, as General KJ said, that the Battle of Muzaffarabad is a very vital battle to understand as to what happened. This had been already arranged by them that the attack will be 2 days before Dussehra. What happens in that unit used to happen is that during Dussehra, the Hindus will get off for 3 days, and on Eid day, because it's a mixed battalion, half Hindu, half Muslim, both Dogras, and on the Eid day, the Muslims will give duty. In fact, this had been advised by Aslam, son of our Brigadier Rahmatullah Khan, who was my earlier brigade commander, who was a citizen of J&K state. He was in Jammu that day, and Aslam had resigned from his unit for J&K after having been awarded military cross on the recommendation of his CO, Colonel Narayan Singh, who was still commanding the battalion at Muzaffarabad. This the British had arranged it almost a year and a half back, and after making him resign in the state unit, he had taken him to 5 Div as a major, intelligence major, where he was told how the plan of attack on J&K was made. Whatever name given, Gulmarg, etc., etc. This planning started much earlier. The British probably had thought of it 1 year before. And that's how this man was taken from Fort J&K, who knew everything, and perhaps General Scott might have told them when Mountbatten had come with Ismay that unless you do the divide and rule or finish the battalion while sleeping, you will never reach. Fort J&K will never let you reach for 10 days anywhere near Srinagar.
Okay, so General Jambal,
So
what you're saying, sir, General Jambal, what you're saying is that with British complicity, Colonel Narayan Singh was the one who was shot by his own troops.
Totally
Major Brown
attack.
does the mutiny in Gilgit.
Pakistanis were, of course, played into it.
And Major Brown then simultaneously does a mutiny in Gilgit.
If you read Surinder Sarela, he was the ADC with the Mountbatten on that day, and he had smelt the rat. He left the army, joined the foreign affairs, and then he went to London. He delved into all the papers, and he has come out with a book.
Okay. Given the fact that this intelligence was not privy,
it was all done by the British.
Yeah, General Jambal, given the fact that this intelligence was not available in detail to Brigadier Rajinder Singh, that 2 or 4 days of action in which he held back the supply chain and the forces, how important was this in the larger scheme of things, sir?
Actually, I tell you, this was the first war of our Indian war between Pakistan arranged by the British. This should have been studied. This war has not been even studied by the Indian Army also. Nobody has studied this war at all. They only start from the landing of the Indian Army. 5 days went by before the landing of the Indian Army. That is the most instructive part of it, most educative part of it. And what Brigadier Rajinder Singh has done, I can tell you, you combined Saragadi and Thermopylae. Both combined will not give you that whatever he obtained it. In Thermopylae, they still lost the capital of that country. But we didn't lose the capital. We lost really nothing. And the area was exactly Thermopylae. And Saragadi, those 21 people, excellent, they died. Now, do you know, on the 23rd morning, Brigadier Rajinder Singh fought the first battle of Gadi, which is not even talked about. I say Gadi battle was even more important than Udi. That gave us 8 hours. And Captain Prithi Singh, he charged on the 300 vehicles and captured their leading vehicle, brought it. Then, of course, that was a Pakistani marking. And our own boys, 2 platoons, which Brigadier Rajinder Singh was commanding at that very time, they finished that vehicle on the middle of the road, and all the tires were burst, and Pakistan could not move for 6 hours.
Such an important story to be told.
Those 6 hours were most vital in this war of J&K.
General,
if they had moved 6 hours, they would have probably caught Maharaj Hari Singh.
yeah, they were thinking that they'll be in Srinagar on the 26th morning. That never happened, and history changed. History changed. At this point of time, at this note, over these 3 or 4 days,
the contact took place.
and to a large credit to Brigadier Rajinder Singh. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've been with us throughout this telecast, I thank you for your time. I thank General Jamwal, who's written extensively about this. You've heard General Hasnain, you've heard General KJ Singh, people who've served in these areas. And this is what, for people in service, this is the inspiration, this is the teaching of history when regimental history is taught. And it should not just be about regimental history or about armed forces history. So I would beg you, go and read about what happened in Mirpur and Baramulla, and what happened in Muzaffarabad, and the mutiny of Major Brown and the British complicity in Gilgit-Baltistan. Go and read and speak about Brigadier Rajinder Singh, about Muhammad Usman. This is something we should all know, because for us to decide whither we go, we must know whence we came. My thanks to everyone, including the family members, for taking part in this tribute telecast. An hour was not enough. We should spend more time on it, and we will. But for now, thank you very much.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.